Hello and welcome to another very special episode of the No Nay Never podcast. I'm Dave Roberts and I've been entrusted with the host chair again today as we do something a little bit different and take a look back on a very memorable season in the history of Burnley Football Club. If you've listened to our recent preview show podcasts, we've mentioned a 2022 charity calendar that's been produced to commemorate the 30th anniversary of Burnley's 4th Division title-winning season of 1991-92. So today, as well as hearing more about this new charity calendar initiative, it would be remiss of us not to take the opportunity to revisit some of the memories of that season with a couple of guests who were very closely involved. Firstly, Clive Lawrence was a Burnley FC's club photographer for several seasons at the start of the 1990s. And on the back of the success of his previous charity calendar, which featured the 1990-91 season when Burnley narrowly missed out to Torquay United in the playoffs, he's done the same again this year. Welcome, Clive. It's a pleasure to have you on the No Nay Never podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to have you here. And I'm also delighted to welcome someone who was a vital player in Burnley's midfield, not only in that season, but during a stay of 5.5 seasons at Turf Moor between 1989 and 1995, helping the Clarets to 2 promotions during that time. Welcome to the podcast to the one and only John Deary, or shall I call you Loafy?
Call me whatever you want, Dave. Hello, Clive. Good evening, everyone.
I'll call you John. I think it's easier.
Not many people call me John, but
do they not? Would you like to explain at this point your nickname? Why are you Loafy?
It started at Blackpool, and one day I was injured, so I was in the treatment room, and we had a physio called Billy Haydock, who was an ex-professional. Played for Man City, etc. And I was never happy being injured, and he used to say, cheer up. So anyway, I was just sitting there and he was there, and I said to him, I was looking at him and I just said, "Hey, Billy, do you know you've got a head shaped like an onion?" And he never liked it. Anyway, a few of the lads cottoned onto it, so everyone started calling him Onion Head. So one day I went back in and he said, "F off, you've got an head like a cottage loaf head," because he had curly hair then and shaved sides and back. And that's how it stuck. A few of the lads stuck. So that was probably when I was about 19, 20. I got that nickname. And I'm known by that right throughout football now.
And it's stayed with you ever since for another 40 years.
Yeah. And it's people call me John outside football, but within football, I don't recognise John if I'm with the ex-players and that someone says John, I wouldn't turn around. It's always Loafy.
I see. All right. Well, going back to what we're talking about today, then, starting with you, Clive, how much of a privilege was it to follow the team at home and away to document the games during your time as club photographer?
It was fantastic. Well, I was studying at Nelson and Colne College at the time, doing my photography, and I used to go on the cricket field, sit next to the tunnel, take the pictures of the game, and I used to alternate that with going in the Bob Lord stand, and then every week I would take the pictures from the game and take them down to Joyce at the club, and I did that for the whole of the 89-90 season, and at the end of that year, she asked me if I wanted to get on board and do the pictures for the programme, which was like a dream come true, really, for me, and then we went through the 89-90 season, and then it really it took off really in the 91-92, and it was just, every game was magic, really. And I mean, what was sad for me in some ways was I sort of towards the end of the season, my career took a different path, and I didn't actually complete that season as club photographer, but I was able to do it, still get to the games and still do the pictures of some of the key games at the end. So, it was, magic days.
And things were very different back then, weren't they? Obviously, in that era, we weren't talking about digital photography. As you mentioned, it's all on film. So things have moved on quite a bit from then, haven't they, in terms of what you were up against, trying to get the images and then get them, produced.
So what we're going back to the days of film, you shoot 2 or 3 rolls of film with 36. So I'd shoot 100 pictures at tops, sometimes just 72 pictures, and you would have to get 10 or 12 decent ones out of it. And when I finished with it, I knew the negatives were really sort of important to me. I just sort of put them in the loft, and that's how this all sort of happened, really, because I put them in the loft, and maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I dug them out, and it just seemed fitting, really, that we could use them to make these calendars and to raise some money for some of the lads who needed it.
Yeah, and then coming back to you, John, looking back at that tremendous 1991-92 season, we did see an early change of manager when Frank Casper departed at the start of October. Did it come as a shock to the players when Frank decided to resign?
It did very much so, because everyone had a lot of respect for Frank. He's a decent manager, but basically when Jimmy took over, it was a shock for everyone. I think what happened, I really don't know what happened, but we went to Russia on a pre-season tour, and that was grim, to put it, and I remember I sort of come back home, and the wife said, "What's happened to you?" Because I'd lost a stone, in pre-season, and I think it took it out of the lads, that tour, and we were slow to start, we didn't really get going, and then all of a sudden, Jimmy Mullins come in as manager, Frank's left, and then it took on from there. But everyone was shocked, when that decision was made.
Yeah, and you're obviously familiar with Jimmy. He was Frank's assistant. But what sort of changes did you notice when he was put in charge? Because obviously he was caretaker manager initially, came in, had a really good run, got the didn't lose a game in October and November, and he got the job permanently then.
He was more direct.
Yeah.
Which, with Frank, we played a bit more football. He wanted to go a bit more direct with the fullbacks, hitting Mike Conroy, etc. up front. And we took to it well. The team took to it. So although we were direct, we could play a bit as well. And it was enjoyable. It was sort of on the front foot. We were pushing forward on teams, and, we went on the run, and Jimmy got the job, and as I said, he bought 1 or 2 players. Mick Conroy, I think he bought, was vital, but the system suited the players we had, and although as I mentioned, it was direct, we played a bit as well. So on times it was exciting to watch and to play in as well.
Yeah, but most of the players were Frank's players, weren't they? But it just maybe needed that change of direction, as you say, to mould that group of players into a team that could go forward and ultimately win the title, which is what you did.
Yeah, I think the players were the same, 1 or 2 changes. And as I said, I think we had a slow start, but the nucleus was there. They were all decent players. And I don't know what happened, but Jimmy took it on, and then played a bit more forceful.
Yeah, we'll come back more to the season. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail. But going back to the calendar, Clive, perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about the idea, starting with last year's edition. You did that 12 months ago, and also the specific causes that will be helped by the sales of this year's edition.
Yeah, we did the one last year, and I thought we may have sold 100. We sold 200 last year, and we were able to raise £2,000 for Gary Parkinson. And I always knew that I had 2 calendars in there. That's what I sort of said from the beginning, and I felt this one would be bigger because of the success of that season. So I was talking to a few of the lads earlier on in the year, and Steve Davis. Steve played with both Gary and Lenny John Rose, and he suggested the Len John Rose Trust. So we sort of thought it seemed right to split them, whatever we make, between the two, between Gary and Lenny. So that was the thought process behind that. And so we're going to have a launch evening on Saturday the 13th at the 110 Club in Burnley.
Yeah, and I think we'll reiterate the details of that later. I think that you're the best person to get in contact with. That is a ticket event, isn't it, with supper included, and a chance to meet a few of the players as well, I believe.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, as I say, we will reiterate that at the end for our listeners, so they can get in touch and hopefully get a few of them along to that event. Coming back to you, John. John Pender captained the team that season, but it seemed there were several captain-like players within that side. There was obviously yourself, Steve Davis, Joe Jacob, both of whom would later captain the side themselves. Other players like Andy Farrell. Did you feel that helped the team, having a nucleus of players who were maybe not captains in name, but were leaders on the pitch?
Of course it did. Everyone had an immense respect for John. John Pender as a captain. He was obviously a great centre half and that, but we respected him as a captain. But then there was other players, we used to chip in. But it was a team that actually gelled. And when we used to go out, we more or less the same 11. What was going on, what we expected of each other. So and when we actually gelled, I think it was around about October and November. It was pretty simple. I'd never ever liked it when people tried to complicate things, because I couldn't. I'd lose interest and couldn't take it in, if they were on about the opposition, this and that. So training sessions were nice and sharp and simple, and everything spot on. But yeah, there was, as I said, characters out there. You could go more or less right throughout the team. There was, strong characters who had the say, and we used to maybe disagree with each other, but there was never any friction.
You obviously spent the best part of a decade at Blackpool. How did your time at Burnley and the team there compare with the teams you played with at Blackpool?
What I found is, but when I got promotion with Blackpool and then the 2 promotions with Burnley, you more or less know that, the players, the characters are similar. What I remember about them promotion years is just enjoyment, and laughter. We enjoyed training. We had plenty of laughter in training, going to matches or going on coaches after the games. Whereas when we had to reapply to stay in the Football League with Blackpool when I was younger, and that was absolutely horrible. For one of my first experiences, it was dreadful. And then you find that the players aren't in harmony, etc., and gelling together. So it is a case of successful teams, have a gel, whereas teams that aren't doing too good, I'm not saying all of them, but there's a missing ingredient there.
And did you feel that was kind of coming together off the pitch as well? I think when you look at that season, and so look at the crowds that season, they built and built as the season went on. There seemed to be a real momentum there, didn't there, on and off the pitch?
Oh, without doubt. Like Burnley's a town where, everyone will get behind you. I remember when I first signed for them and we weren't too good, and, there's a bit of unrest, with the town, with the public and that. But when you're doing well, everything comes together as one, and you can sense that it's a lot happier place, whereas when the football club's not doing too good, that people aren't as joyful, as happy. But yeah, that 2 seasons, especially the 91-92 season, I did feel an immense sort of pleasure within the town.
Yeah, and here's a question for both of you. There's a generation of younger Burnley supporters who've come to know that 1991-92 season really well. That's thanks to the biggest I think it was the biggest selling club's highlights video. It's released on DVD as well. They did an anniversary edition. I don't know whether you remember that, in 2011 for 20 years. Behind me, actually, if you look, the One Night in York DVD. When I mentioned to the rest of the No Nay Never team, I'd be speaking to you both. Tom Whittaker said he'd watched that season highlights video compilation loads of times, even though there was only 2 at the time when the season was taking place. How do you both reflect on that season in terms of what it means to both yourselves and also to the wider Burnley fan base, starting with you, Clive?
Well, you go first, John. You were on the pitch. You go first, John.
Cheers, Clive. Passing the buck there.
Yeah, my memory, it's funny, because sometimes I can only remember, my memory's jogged when I see a video or I see a photograph, because I was sure that I'd gone to the second game at Derby, but I wasn't 100%, and I watched the video and I'm on there. So as soon as I saw it, it all comes back. But it is a long time ago, so yeah, my memory's not as It's not as clear as yours, mate.
No, I remember it like yesterday, you know, because it was a fantastic season, you know, and when something's that good and happy, it doesn't go out your mind. But I remember, you know, there was a momentum gathering and the fans were coming with us, and, you know, we were, I think against Blackpool maybe or somewhere, you know, we were getting 18,000s, we were getting regular 10, 12s. And the feedback we got from the people was they were enjoying it, seeing what they did. And I think it's a case of they still talk about maybe them early years that the younger supporters now can still relate to or get tied into. But yeah, it's magical, you know, what's happened, and I appreciate, you know, everything that I did with Burnley.
It's really hard to put your finger on what it was about it, but it was such an exciting season, weren't it? How it's hard to quantify what has made that capture people's imagination so much. But you know, even that night at the first game at Derby when we went in, it was called off. I don't know if you remember, John. And
I think it was Fog. Was it Fog?
It was Fog.
Yeah.
And then we went down for the second one, and everyone was singing Jimmy Mullen's name for 20 minutes after the game, and everyone came back out, didn't they? And there was a buzz about every game, weren't there?
Have you got any other memories of that? Any specific moments that stand out for you, John, in terms of either specific games or even other things outside of the 90 minutes that stand out for you?
I think an unhappy one was it Burnley? Was that the season? Yeah.
That was interesting, wasn't it? Because it was supposed to be the York game later that week. I think it was the following day, wasn't it? After Ben's tragic fall from the long side roof. We covered this actually. I spoke to Paul Weller. Paul Weller had his book out earlier in the year, and we did a special podcast with him. He was obviously a youth team player, but in and around the team at that time. He was also with the youth team players at York for that game at over there that we won. And he was saying about that as well. But yeah, that was a tragic moment in that season, wasn't it? But the York game wouldn't have been the York game if that hadn't have happened. It was just one of those tragic circumstances.
Yeah, it was. And I remember when it happened, it shook the club. Everyone was sad, and that, you know, we didn't know how to react to it, you know, because as I said, you know, it was a happy dressing room, but you know, we come in and we didn't know whether to laugh, tell jokes and that, and you know, it shook us for a bit, and then in the end, you know, we did move on from it. But yeah, that night in York, everyone remembers that night, you know. At the end, I remember I'm not on many pictures there because I remember it was a long season, wasn't it? So we went there, and I remember coming off the pitch and thinking, Christ, I'm thirsty here. So I got changed quick and legged it to the bar where, you know, most of the lads were celebrating and still in the kit. So I don't think I'm on many photos in the dressing room on that night.
Was he on any of your photos, Clive?
No. I wasn't there that night.
Ah, right.
So yeah, that's one of the things that I kind of look back and you know, I know I missed out on. I think one of the games that I remember most was it was Northampton away, which, because we had a few goalkeepers that season, and it was Andy Marriott. It was his last game. I don't know if you remember, John. And at the end, all the fans come on the pitch. And they put him up on the shoulders, and they carried him back to the dressing room. And I've got a picture, and Jimmy stood at the tunnel watching, waiting for him to come back. And he sat on their shoulders with his arms all off. You know, fantastic atmosphere at the end of that one.
Yeah, because did we use 4 or 5 keepers that year?
Yeah.
And I remember that I thought all of them was decent, you know, very good keepers.
It's a strange thing, It's a strange thing, isn't it? Because normally in a season when you're going well, you've got one settled goalkeeper and that tends to settle the side. But to have so many different goalkeepers but still have that momentum was quite unusual.
Yeah, because I think Jimmy mightn't have been confident in the goalkeepers that was on the staff. Whereas I think was the 3 on loan keepers.
Yeah,
Was Marlon there? Marlon Beresford.
Mark Roberts, Nicky Weaver. Was it Nicky Weaver? Have I got that right? No, not Nicky Weaver. It was
David Williams.
David was on the staff, wasn't he? David Williams and Chris Pearce.
Yeah.
Then Andy Marriott.
Yeah.
Was Mark Kendall there, or was that another year?
That was before, I think, wasn't it?
That was before, yeah. I think it was Nicky Walker.
Nicky Walker, yeah. Yeah, with blonde hair.
Yes, that's right,
hair.
Yeah. And then who else?
Yeah.
Andy Marriott. And was Marlon that season? No.
No, so there'd been David Williams, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, David Williams, Chris Pearce,
yes.
Andy Marriott, Nicky Walker.
That's enough.
And one more.
Mark Roberts. Yeah.
So in terms of any other standout moments, any other highlights for you, John? You scored a few goals that season as well. You were handy on. A fact while you're here, I looked on your profile. Looked on the Vintage Clarets website. You're obviously the captain of the Vintage Clarets, and they've taken your goal scoring information for Burnley from Wikipedia, which is wrong. Said you'd only ever scored 6 goals for Burnley, but you actually scored 27. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. 27, 23 in the league. I think you scored 6 in that season. Were there any that stood out for you in terms of particular goals that season?
Not really, because I can't remember. That's why. But I remember a few times, when we used to, as I said, we used to play attacking football, and a few times I used to be on, through 1-on-1 on the keeper, and I remember, I used to love that, and sliding it under and then running, celebrating. I used to, I enjoyed the 1-on-1s on the keeper.
There was quite a memorable one at York, though. Can you talk us through that one?
Yeah, I've only recently realised that I think the keeper kicked it, and then I think John Pender or someone headed it, and then Mix flicked it on, and then there's John Francis, who was super quick, Harps on the left wing, and then Robbie Painter. Mm-hmm. But now I've only just realised in the recent months is I don't know how I made up that ground. Because it was never the quickest. I was never the quickest. But,
adrenaline.
Yeah. But I think I would have only been like 2 or 3 yards in front of John Pender when he headed that. So, it didn't make up the ground. And then, obviously, Robbie's got there. He's tried to head it. And then it's just broke. And then I've just gone all steaming in. And, obviously, it's hit the back of the net.
He didn't try to claim it then, because looking at the replay in slow motion, if we're having the dubious goals panel, it looked like it might have flicked off Robbie Painter before it went in.
Well, that's the only way I could have scored, by using Robbie's bottom.
It'll forever be your goal, John. No one can take it away.
No, it is. I don't know the own goal rules or the different rules, but yeah. No, as I said, I think I slid in to get it, and Robbie was there, and it did come off Robbie sometimes, but I don't think Robbie's ever tried to claim it, or anyone's
he wouldn't dare, would he?
The ways. No, but I remember that was magical because it was in front of the travelling Burnley fans, and you could feel the eruption in the ground. They were all over the place, but in the back of that goal, they were all there, and you could feel the ground buzzing.
And there was a bit of afters with goalkeeper Dean Kiley afterwards. Were words exchanged there?
I don't remember that. No. Well, to be honest, what I remember of it is, obviously we've scored and I'm about to celebrate, and I turn round because they ended up in the net celebrating with the fans at the back of the goal. So I turned round and he's took a swing.
I've got pictures from the season before with York, and he was always falling out with players. He fell out with Neil Grucock the season before.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, because I've got pictures of him like having a right go with Neil. Maybe just in like Burnley.
Yeah.
You've got the photographic evidence there, haven't you? One thing I was interested to hear from both of you is how closely you follow Burnley's fortunes in 2021.
Yeah, well, we've got season tickets. I've got season tickets with my three boys. We sit in the James Hargreaves up there. And we're not really worried. We feel that the team's fairly solid, and they were just struggling to put the ball in the back of the net, really. And with Cornet coming on board, he's just been like a breath of fresh air, and he's worth the admission fee on his own. The flair, the excitement every time he gets the ball. We just all love him, and we think. I honestly think we're going to be fine. It just needed that. It just needed him to put the ball in the back of the net, and I think we're going to. It's going to be tough at Chelsea over the weekend, but I think we'll be fine this season.
I don't think our season will be won and lost by a result at Chelsea, will it?
No. Anything at Chelsea will be a bonus.
And how about you, John? Do you ever get to Turf Moor these days?
I don't really. I haven't been this season, but I do watch them, when they're on the telly. I've got an app there that shows all the games, so I do watch Burnley. I think, the signing they've done there is magnificent. I think the fans have been crying out for something regarding a signing for quite a long time, and it seems that this guy's hit the spot. Regarding positions and performances, I think the manager Sean has said he's quite happy with the performances. They had a good win last week, and I would say, with the manager and the team, they've got too much in the locker. They've been there, done there. And, I'm totally confident that, they won't go down this season. They've been there. And so, there's a few other teams which I think, there's one definitely I would say going down, and maybe two others. Well, I think Burnley, once they get a little run going, we'll be comfortable. What we've got to understand is it's a tough league.
It is.
And we've got to be realistic. With injuries, etc. But yeah, I'm confident. They tend to be near about there, or most seasons. It just shows, when they finished seventh a couple of seasons ago, what an absolute magnificent season that was. But yeah, I'm confident they'll stay up this year.
Good to hear. I think we're all in agreement on that. I think there are one or two nerves, but I think as you say, the performances have been good, and hopefully we can build on the momentum of the win against Brentford and push on from there. So before we wrap up, perhaps Clive, you could remind our listeners again about the details of the launch event that's coming up, the one you've organised for Saturday the 13th, and how everyone can get their hands on a copy of this 2022 calendar.
Yeah, we're down at the 110 Club on Yorkshire Street in Burnley on Saturday the 13th, and admission for that is £10, which covers a pie and peas supper, and all the proceeds that we make for that are going to go into the charity. We're hoping to have the calendars. There's been a slight delay with the printing, but I've been promised that I'm going to have them in the next few days, so we'll have them on sale on the night. They cost £15 each, and of that £15, £10 goes to the charity. My email address is clivelawrence@me.com.
Right.
And more than happy to sort you out with a ticket for that if you want one.
Great. Well, we'll put all those details on when we publish this podcast, and we'll put it out on social media as well, and hopefully get a few people along to the event that you've organised, and also get some purchase for the calendar. It's a limited edition calendar, isn't it? But there'll be plenty of copies out there. People can get in early enough and get their orders in.
Yeah, there is 300 copies.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there's 300 of them. So once we sold out last year, and there were people messaging me for them after they'd gone. So let me know if you want one.
As you say, there should be quite a bit of demand for that with the interest from the 1991-92 season, which was such a memorable one for Burnley fans. So all that remains for me to do is to thank our guests, photographer Clive Lawrence and former Burnley midfielder John Deary, for joining us this time, as well as thanking you for taking the time to listen today. I've been Dave Roberts. This has been the latest international break special from the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.